Yeah, you tuned into the right place. Welcome to the rain. Golden Queuing. H 2.0. Yeah. You're looking for a diamond, found a treasure in the rough. Tired of all the noise, cause you finally had enough. I'm here to build a movement on a mission for the nation. Dropping gems of knowledge, killing all the hesitation. We fighting for the truth, yeah, we fighting for what's right. Building unity and shining up a brand new light. It's a variety channel, but the vision's crystal clear. Pushing us all forward, conquering the doubt and fear. Welcome to the Queendom, it's 2.0 on your screen, where the content's real and smart and funny in between. This is more than just a stream, it's a platform for the change. Time to elevate the game and rearrange. See if you're ready for a vibe that you can feel and trust. Joining in the movement is a definite must. This ain't just another channel talking smack behind the screen. It's a spotlight for the creators, building up a better scene. Spreading radical love, that's the message in the code. Helping everybody carry up a heavy load. From social justice issues to the laughter that we need. Planting seeds of progress, watch them grow from just a seed. This is authentic, this is raw, this is everything you saw. Welcome to the battle that is truly being fought. Ooh, so come with your respect and see the real effect. Cause I protect my own right here on the throne. Don't make me enemy. Unleash the dragon. Subscribe, ring that notification bell. Yeah, you don't wanna miss a thing. Welcome to the family. Yeah.
What a weight to carry now. The foundations were laid in the red clay and dust. In the spirits of giants, in the God that we trust. From the islands to the prairies, across the deep blue. Where the fruit of the seeds that these great men once threw. They stood for us. The legacy they live to teach. Yo, I'm talking Dr. Moody Hill in London with a vision. Broke the color bar with surgical precision. Found a league of people stood tall against the hate. A Jamaican son in Britain, opening up the gate. Then we ride to the north where the cold wind blows. John Ware on the saddle where the wild grass grows. A cowboy in Alberta, 4 9s branded deep. A promise of excellence he was destined to keep. Right on, John. It's a live legacy. It's alive, yeah. Flowing like a river to the deep green sea. From the Congo to the crown, we finally free. It's alive. Legacy. It's alive. Yeah. Now see, by y'all Rustin, the architect of the march, building up the movement, he was the cornerstone arch. Non-violent warrior, strategist of the soul. He kept the dream moving, he kept us on the road. Then we go to the Congo, Patrice Lumumba's cry. Independence for the African under the sun in the sky. He gave his life for the soil, for the diamond and the gold. A story of a martyr that'll forever be told. Free the Congo. Zumbi warrior upon Paris, defending the jungle, breaking the snare. Lennox Pierre, law in his hand, protecting the pan, the soul of the land. Y'all the rose, the word is the light. New beacon burning through the dark of the night. They used the law, used the pen, used the drum and the pan to prove the divinity within every black man. From the Brazilian forest to the London street walk, it's more than just history. It's the way that we talk, it's the way that we lead, it's the way that we rise. The fire of the ancestors is bright in our
right, y'all. What's up? What's up? What's up? It's your girl Golden. Let me know if y'all can hear me. I was having a little bit of sound issues, but I believe I fixed it. So y'all let me know if y'all can hear me. What is up? What is up? What is up? I hope everybody is having a wonderful day, y'all. We have almost made it to the end of the week. It's Thursday, March 26th. And it is about 3:40 p.m. here Eastern time in the United States and the Carolinas. The weather is nice outside per usual. The sun is shining and it is warm. And I am so glad that we're getting into spring and summer weather and temperatures because the cold has been getting on my nerves. So I hope you guys are having an excellent day in whatever respectful time zone you're in, whether it's morning, afternoon, evening, or night. I hope you're having a wonderful one. And so, y'all, we're going to be getting into a few things on the live. You see what we'll be talking about today. We're going back to the history zone, and we're going to be doing a little Black history. We did miss out on a little bit of that during the month of February, but hey, we can talk about it and celebrate it at any given time. It doesn't have to just be 1 month, right? And so y'all seen, or maybe you saw, that I did do a video when it came to some really excellent Black women throughout history globally, all over the globe, right? And so I wanted to do the same to celebrate some Black men as well, all over the globe when it comes to Black male history. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. I'm going to give y'all a little bit of breakdown about each one of these men here. If y'all have not learned or heard about them before, we're going to go ahead and get into that on this live. So that's what it's about. So let's dive right into it, okay? So today we will be honoring a live legacy. We'll be traveling globally from the UK to Canada to the United States to Africa to Brazil and the Caribbean to spotlight 6 Black men who didn't just live history, they changed it. The goal of today's session is to teach, to honor, and to ensure that these names are never forgotten. We are looking at men who led with their minds, their strength, and their courage. Whether they were cowboys on the Canadian prairies or kings in the Congo, their stories belong to all of us. Let's dive into the global blueprint of Black excellence. So first on the docket, y'all, we will, and you know, per usual, I have some videos and stuff as well to show y'all, but we will be talking about Dr. Harold Moody, who was born in 1882 and did pass away in 1947 at age 64. He was from the United Kingdom, but he was Jamaican. He was born in Kingston, Jamaica. Harold Moody traveled to London in 1904 to study medicine. He was a brilliant student, but when he graduated, the world tried to shut its doors. Despite his top qualifications, no hospitals would hire him because of the color of his skin. A silent rule of segregation that was big in that time in Britain. One matron even told him she would have a colored doctor on her staff. Never, ever, ever would happen. Dr. Moody didn't give up. In 1913, he opened his own medical practice in Peckham, South London. He became known as a man of deep faith and compassion, often treating the poor for free. In 1931, he founded the League of Colored Peoples, which became the most influential civil rights organization in Britain. He spent his life lobbying the government for fair wages, better housing, and an end to discrimination. Then we will also be speaking about John Ware, who was born in 1845 and did pass away in 1905 at age 60. His region was Canada and the United States. John Ware's journey is one of incredible grit. Born into slavery in the American South, he gained his freedom after the Civil War and headed west to Texas. There, he mastered the art of being a cowboy, roping, riding, and taming the wildest horses. In 1882, he joined a massive cattle drive, moving 3,000 head of cattle across 2,000 miles into Alberta, Canada. In Canada, John Ware became a legend. He was famous for his superhuman strength. Stories say he could walk across the backs of a huddle of cattle to help a stranded hand. Despite the freezing winters and the intense racism of the frontier, he built his own successful ranch empire, 4 Nines, 9999 brand. He proved that a black man could not only survive the rugged North, but could also lead it. We also will be talking about Bayard Rustin, who was born in 1912 and passed away in 1987 at the age 75. He also, the region that he also represents is the United States. If you heard of the 1963 March on Washington, you need to know the name Bayard Rustin. He was the chief architect of that historic day. Raised as a Quaker with a deep belief in nonviolence, Rustin was the man who actually taught Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. the tactics of peaceful protest. Rustin lived a life in immense courage. As a gay black man in the 1940s and 50s, he was often pushed into the shadows by other leaders who feared his identity would hurt the movement. But he never stopped working. He spent 22 days on a chain gang in North Carolina for protesting segregated buses years before the Freedom Riders started. He was a master of logistics and a fearless truth teller who showed us that the work of justice belongs to everyone. We also will be talking about Patrice Lumumba, who was born in 1925 and did pass away in 1961 at a very young age of 35 years old due to assassination. Lumumba is from Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Patrice Lumumba was a fiery visionary who led the Democratic Republic of the Congo to independence from Belgium in 1960. Born into a poor farming family, he was largely self-educated, spending his nights reading the works of philosophers. He rose from being a postal clerk to becoming the first legally elected prime minister of his nation at just 34 years old. On Independence Day, he gave a speech that shook the world, speaking the raw truth about the humiliating slavery the Congolese people had endured. He dreamed of an Africa that was truly free, not just on paper, but economically and culturally. Though his life was tragically cut short, his name remains a global symbol of Pan-African pride and the fight for sovereignty. Then we'll also be discussing Zumbi dos Palmares, who was born in 1655 and did pass away in 1695 at the age of 40. The region that Zumbi is from is Brazil. In the jungles of Brazil, there was once a kingdom of freedom called Palmares. Its greatest leader was Zumbi. Born free in his community of escaped enslaved people, Zumbi was captured as a child and raised by a priest who taught him Latin and Portuguese. But at 15 years old, he escaped and returned to his people. Zumbi became a master of capoeira, the martial arts disguised as dance, and a brilliant military strategist. For 15 years, he led Palmares against the Portuguese army, defending a community of over 30,000 people who lived as free citizens while the rest of the country was in chains. Today, Brazil celebrates Black Awareness Day, an anniversary of his passing, honoring him as the ultimate warrior for the liberty in the Americas. We also will speak on two additional men, John LaRose, who was born in 1927 and did pass in 2006, and Lennox Pierre, who was born in 1928 and passed in 1994. Both of them background and region comes from Trinidad and the United Kingdom. These two men were a powerhouse duo from Trinidad who believed that culture is a weapon. Lennox Pierre was a brilliant lawyer who fought for the rights of the common people. He is most famous for his work with the steel pan movement, using his legal mind to give those musicians dignity and protection when the colonial government tried to look down on them. His close friend, John LaRose, moved to London and founded New Beacon Books in 1966, the first Black bookshop and publishing house in the United Kingdom. He didn't just sell books, he created a home for Black history. When 13 Black children were unalived in a suspicious fire in London in 1981, it was John LaRose who organized the Black People's Day of Action, leading 20,000 people through the streets to demand justice. Together, they showed us that the pen, the law, and the drum are the tools that we can use to build a legacy. So, y'all, that's a quick rundown of all of these men we will be discussing in this live. Let me go ahead and get right into it. And we will start on our first gentleman of the live. We will be talking about, give me just a second, y'all. Harold Moody. So let's go ahead and get into this video real quick. This one, like I said, is very short. It's about 4 minutes introduction. And then I have one that's going to get into a little bit more briefer details as far as, the great history of this man and all that he did. So let me go ahead and put this one up for you guys real quick for us to watch together. And I will meet y'all in the chat per usual. And y'all let me know, do you know any of these historical men? And what do you think after we watch this together? How do you feel after that? You know what I mean? Does it make you proud? And should we uplift and talk about historical Black men and even Black men that are doing great things currently more, and uplift them and not always have a lot of negativity around them? Because there's a lot of, and not just Black men, but we're talking about that on this live. But there's a lot of Black men and men, period, that are doing excellent work and great things that need to be celebrated and that need to be shown. They need a platform. They need people to know who they are and what they do. So let's go ahead and get into this video, y'all, and I will meet y'all over in the chat.
Now leaving the United States, we travel to the other side of the pond, to Great Britain, where Jamaican-born Harold Arundel Moody would immigrate and become an educated physician while campaigning against racial prejudice. Harold Moody was born in Kingston, Jamaica in 1882 and would spend most of his early life living in Jamaica. He worked in his father's pharmaceutical business while studying at Warmer School. He completed his secondary education with a distinction in mathematics. In 1904, he had accumulated enough money to pursue medical studies in England at King's College University, London. Over the course of his years studying, Moody earned several academic honours and awards, and by 1910 he had become a member of the Royal College of Surgeons and the London Royal College of Physicians. In 1919 he received his Doctors of Medicine degree, finishing top of his class at the age of 28. Despite all his achievements and being qualified, Moody was refused employment because of the colour of his skin. Undeterred, he started his own medical practice in Peckham, an area in southeast London, in February 1913. After the fact that he had struggled to be accepted because of his race, Moody formed and became president of the League of Coloured People. With the help of Dr. Charles Wesley, the chairman of the history department at Howard University in Washington, D.C., using a YMC Centre in Tottenham Court Road, London, Wesley and Moody would hold meetings and organise rallies for racial equality and civil rights in Britain. The League would include some well-established names, such as noted author Cyril Lionel Robert James from Trinidad and Tobago, and Sir Larry Constantine, a famous Trinidadian cricketer. Not forgetting his homeland, Moody would return to Jamaica on numerous occasions and kept active interest in Caribbean affairs. In 1937, during a time when economical and political unrest was sweeping through the Caribbean region, several West Indian leaders were incarcerated by the colonial authorities. Moody and the League would send delegates to the colonial office in aid of challenging these social destabilizations. Their efforts would eventually lead to the Colonial Development and Welfare Act of 1940. This policy focused on providing financial resources for social and economical changes in the Caribbean. Howard was a devoted Christian and worked for a number of religious communities, becoming a board member of the Church Ministry Society. as well as a member of the Christian Endeavour Union, where he would later become its president. His connections with these groups provided him with lifelong support in his quest to improve the lives of African descent. Moody's name had become well established, and his practice in Peckham had become a well-known place for recently arrived West Indian students and others in England to visit and seek guidance and assistance. He would continue to fight for other causes, including employment rights for black merchant seamen, fair pay for the Trinidadian oil workers, and the lifting of the implicit colour bar in the British Armed Forces that had prevented the appointment of black officers. He was heavily involved in organising the local community during the Second World War. Author David Vaughan would publish a book titled Negro Victory, the life story of Dr. Harold Moody in 1950. A blue plaque was erected in 1995 outside the house where Moody lived in Peckham as a memory to his efforts.
All right, y'all. So that was the first video. I just wanted to go ahead and play that one. It was really short and quick. And I would like playing those type of videos as well, because like I said, these type of topics are very much family friendly. So a lot of time my son, he may be around. He loves that channel and those videos to watch. And I think it's very important for even our young children to learn about history as well, but sometimes in a way where they can receive it and understand it. But let's go ahead and get into this second video, y'all, because I know it's mostly adults here that's with us, but just in case your kids are in the background, you know that we'll have some videos that are, you know, family friendly, kid friendly, and things that they may can understand as well. Let's go ahead and get into this next video. And again, this is still about Harold Moody. So let's go ahead and watch this together, y'all. This one is more so for adults. Not to say that it's a trigger warning or inappropriate. It's just more so where, you know, we understand it and we can, you know, digest it and less of like a cartoon or a kiddish version. So let's go ahead and get into it, and I'll meet y'all over in the chat.
Harold Moody was a great Anglophile, a great believer in the empire, very much an empire loyalist. And what distressed him was the discovery that there was racial discrimination here in the army, the armed services, and the civil service.
This is a man who does not want to pull down the Union Jack around the empire. What he wants is a genuine, multiracial, properly democratic empire.
Harold Aranda Moody was born in Jamaica in 1882. He was the eldest son of a middle-class family. His father, Charles Ernest Moody, owned a chemist shop in Kingston. His mother, Christiana Ellis, a woman with little formal education, was ambitious for her children. In a colonial Jamaica, stratified by pigmentation and class, Moody was introduced to the politics of race from an early age. Religion played a central role in family life. At 22, Moody was a bright, ambitious young man, loyal to England and her empire.
What they did, upper middle class families, was to send their children to England to make them into young Englishmen.
He arrives at Bristol, gets on the train and goes to Paddington. And there's this large, bewildering city. 8 million people, huge houses. The only difference is that there aren't electric trams that Moody had experienced in Kingston, so Kingston's a little bit ahead. The first problem for Moody is, where's he going to stay? And he walks the streets looking for somewhere where he can stay before he goes down to King's to start his medical studies. And he's rebuffed, turned away at a number of houses. It's a London that has very, very few people who are black. There are perhaps a few around the dock area, seamen. There are a few professionals.
The warm welcome that he had expected from the mother country was not forthcoming. There was widespread historical and geographical ignorance of Britain's colonies and its people.
The main problem which colonial students faced was the problem of racism. And this racism manifested itself in a colour bar, in accommodation in particular. It's very, very difficult to find accommodation in London. Students used to complain about what they called the colour tax. That's to say, if you were black, then you paid more.
For Harold Moody, his first brush with racism was a shock. But his involvement with a church in Jamaica opened some doors.
Moody has got some letters of invitation to the London Missionary Society, which was the Congregational Mission. And he gets his accommodation partly through them. So he's got friends in reasonably high places who are familiar with working with people from overseas. And Moody is then taken into various households as a guest. He's invited to dinner. And he comments that people viewed him as someone rather strange. How did you speak English? And this is a man who only speaks English, who knows more about Shakespeare than he knows about any Jamaican writers or West Indian writers. And people are curious, and they think of black people as being somehow savage or primitive. And they're confronted by this very sophisticated, well-read, highly intelligent, well-spoken, bourgeois black man.
Harold Moody was a good student, and he excelled during his time at King's College Hospital. He won several prizes. One of them was this Bible that became his diary and confessional. But Moody had to deal with racism on the streets of London every day.
The children would come up and ask him the time. And when he told them the time, they'd run away laughing and say, "Oh, it speaks." Yeah, he had some few instances in his lifetime, of course he did. But it didn't change him one little bit in his viewpoint. No, it didn't make him bitter at all. He was able to, I suppose, by the grace of God, to overcome all these various problems. I mean, God was so real to him in his life.
Moody's faith and determination, and he graduated successfully, only to face yet another hurdle.
Moody fails to get a job in a hospital, the kind of job that he, by his qualifications, would have been entitled to. He's actually turned down and told that poor working class people would not want a nigger for a doctor.
After many rejections due to what today will be clearly referred to as institutional racism, Moody took out a 3-year lease on these premises in Peckham. The first year was very difficult because the income of the practice was just £1. Moody's income had to be supplemented by the Marylebone Medical Mission. Why didn't he give up? Well, he strongly believed that God had called him to serve the people of South London. And he stayed for another 10 years. And the major events in Moody's life during those 10 years are documented in his Bible.
Harold Moody marries a white nurse. That would have been reasonably unusual in Britain. And his family were not terribly happy with this. Her family certainly were not, although both families come round to it in the end. A mixed-race couple would have stood out very much in South London in 1913, 1914. But it's a very happy marriage.
With a wife to share his burden, Moody set about building up his practice and getting involved with the local Congregational church.
My life revolved around the church, really. We went there 3 times on a Sunday morning, afternoon, and evening, and very often during the week for clubs and organizations. The church meant everything to him. And in the early days, he was Sunday school superintendent at Clifton Congregational Church, which was the first church I remember we went to.
By 1919, Harold and Olive Moody had 4 children. He had completed his studies and was now a doctor of medicine. His practice was thriving, and his deep faith and strong sense of discipline kept order in the home.
He woke us all up, and we all got up. We were all up early, and we had a routine of a cold bath in the morning, and then breakfast. We were all there for breakfast, and after breakfast, we had devotional period before we went off to school, and he went off to do his work in the surgery. He was a very popular person in Peckham because of his practice mainly. He was a very good doctor, and people appreciated this, and people came from far and near to see him.
By the time Harold Moody moved here in 1921, he was a much loved and respected local doctor. His medical practice was thriving, and by the help of a God he trusted and dearly worshipped, he had achieved most of the targets he set for himself. For example, he'd finally obtained a doctorate from King's College London. He had a very happy family, and his children were being put through private education. And typical of the man who never forgot his roots, he had taken his wife and children to Jamaica to visit his much-loved mother. And although his preaching throughout Britain was mainly to white congregations about equality, he strongly believed that he was on his way to achieving something for his own race.
We had a home of 7 bedrooms, 5 of which were double bedrooms, and a big lounge and dining room, and in it also contained my father's surgery and waiting room. So it was a large home. And also we had our own tennis court in the garden, so we all grew up to play pretty good sort of tennis, and we also had 2 maids that always lived in with us, and so we had a pretty good lifestyle, really, I suppose, in those days.
All right, y'all. So that was the first man that we were speaking about within this history lesson today, and that was Dr. Harold Moody. Okay. And so some of the things that I wanted to just point out as far as learning about the history of this is that, Dr. Moody, he fought the color bar in London, a polite way of basically saying Black people at a point in time were shut out of hospitals and professional life as far as being doctors and medical professionals. But he fought a system that viewed Black health as an afterthought. Now, I like to tie some of this stuff in when it comes to history to current as well. So if we think about some of the things that we're seeing in 2026, we are fighting a medical apartheid 2.0. Race separation has moved into the code. We see pharmacy deserts in our neighborhoods and AI diagnostic tools that are trained only for certain races of people, leading to a lot of misdiagnosis. The policy fight is now health data sovereignty. We are fighting against a 2-tiered system where the wealthy get personalized gene therapy, perhaps, and regular communities get automated budget healthcare, if they even can have that, because we know that they're trying to take affordable healthcare away from people who need it the most. Dr. Moody didn't just want a doctor's bag, he wanted a seat at the policy table to ensure we weren't experimented on or ignored when it comes to health. They tried to keep Dr. Moody out of the ward, but he built his own. Today, don't let a screen tell you your life is worth less than a data point. Our breath is divine and our care must be equal. So when it comes to the medical strides and struggles that we have seen years and years and years ago, and the ones that we're seeing currently still to this day, we can make a comparison between the two, because some of the things seem like they're trying to go back in time, or take us back in history. And we cannot allow that to happen, y'all. So now we're going to be moving right along, and we're going to get into the next famous Black man that we'll talk about that historically made great changes that maybe doesn't get talked about enough. So we'll be talking about, excuse me, y'all, John Ware. Okay. Now, when we talk about John Ware, this is a Canadian West story. So we're going to be talking about, and I told y'all on the intro, basically, I'll give you a little brief synopsis because I know some people are just coming in, so no problem with that. But when we talk about John Ware, we're going to be talking about the erasure of Black presence in the 1880 struggles. Ware had to prove his belonging in a frontier world that tried to paint him as an outsider. Now, how can we compare that to what we've seen recently? The battle over critical race theory and the removal of Black history from a lot of schools and curriculums. Today, we see certain school boards removing books about Black pioneers. When they erase John Ware, they erase our right to land. Just as John Ware branded his cattle to show ownership, we have to brand our history in the digital space so it can never be deleted. So let's go ahead and get into this next video, y'all. Let me put this up here so we can learn a little bit more about John Ware. We'll watch together, and I'll meet y'all in the chat per usual. All right, here we go.
Of Black History Month 2020, we've decided to put together this video series on 10 Black Canadians who helped shape our country into what it is today. Enjoy. In 1874, the Northwest Mounted Police marched from Manitoba to a lawless frontier, a land which would one day become southern Alberta. With tact and diplomacy, they quickly brought law and order to Canada's Wild West. By the late 1870s, the buffalo which once dominated the Canadian prairies were reduced to a scattering of tiny herds, making way for another bovine breed which would come to serve as a symbol of the province: cattle. Similarly, by the 1880s, the whiskey traders, wolfers, and prospectors who once made up the region's non-Aboriginal population were supplanted by another breed of frontiersmen, the cowboy. Of all of southern Alberta's early cowpokes, perhaps the most beloved was a friendly black wrangler named John Ware. John Ware was born into a life of slavery on a South Carolinian plantation sometime in 1845. Little is known about his early life, although his lowly status, coupled with his actions as a free man, suggests that it was anything but pleasant. In 1863, at the end of the American Civil War, U.S. President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. As a result, John Ware, along with 3 million fellow American slaves, went free. As soon as he was able, the 18-year-old freeman left the Black Belt for the West, never to return. First, he traveled to Texas, where the ranching industry was in full bloom. There, the former slave decided to try his hand as a cowpoke. Said historian Grant McEwen of Ware's early career in the saddle, quote, "John Ware was not a good cattleman. He'd never chased a steer in his life, but he had some ambition," unquote. This ambition ultimately drove him to Fort Worth in northeastern Texas. In that old frontier town, he secured a position as a steer herder. Even at 18, John Ware was an enormous man. Tall, muscular, and strong as an ox, his physical ability, in the eyes of his employers, made up for his complete lack of experience. He was a fast learner and, once given the opportunity, quickly honed his skills as a horseman. Soon, he found himself driving cattle northwest across the Great Plains, bound for Montana. By all accounts, John Ware was a kind, friendly, good-natured man who was always quick to lend a helping hand. His amiable demeanor endeared him to many of his fellow cowpokes on the journey to Montana. One of the men with whom he became fast friends was a cowboy named Bill Moody. After many days in the saddle, the company finally arrived in Montana. Shortly after delivering their long-horned cargo, they were approached by a seasoned cattle driver named Tom Lynch. Lynch had been hired by a Canadian rancher rancher named Fred Stimson to drive a herd of 3,000 cattle north across the border. He needed extra cowhands to help him with the task and invited Bill Moody to join his team. Moody agreed on the condition that Lynch also hire John Ware. Tom Lynch accepted Moody's condition, and in no time, John Ware was riding for Canada. Somewhere along the trail to the Great White North, John Ware asked Lynch for a more spirited horse. The veteran cowboy obliged, bringing the greenhorn a wild Mustang, which he was certain he would be unable to break. While his fellow cowhands stood by in anticipation, Ware vaulted up onto the animal's back. Immediately, the bronco began to buck wildly, furiously struggling to rid itself of the unwanted rider. Ware held on for dear life, desperately gripping the horse's ribs with his powerful legs. Due to either his incredible size or sheer nerve, or perhaps some combination thereof, Ware retained his mount. Eventually, he forced the bronco into submission. When his horse finally calmed down, his fellow cowboys told him that his performance was the best bronc ride they had ever seen. On September 1882, John Ware rode into what would become southern Alberta. It is said that when he got his first glimpse of the Albertan foothills and the Rocky Mountains beyond, he remarked, "If old Adam saw this, he'd want to sell the Garden of Eden." Although he did not know it at the time, Ware was probably the third black person to set foot in the region. He was preceded by a whiskey trader named William Bond, and by a household servant who had made the journey west with the family of former Northwest Mounted Police Commissioner James McLeod. Eventually, John Ware and Lynch's team arrived at their destination, Fred Stimson's property on the Highwood River, the Bar U Ranch. On Lynn's recommendation, Fred Stimson hired John Ware to work at the Bar U Ranch. The South Carolinian greenhorn, he maintained, had proved himself to be an extremely competent cowhand and an enjoyable companion on the journey from Montana. Fred Stimson soon found that he was equally pleased with Ware's abilities and pleasant nature. John Ware's first winter in Canada was a brutal shock. After the first snowfall of the year, Stimson sent him out to round up some scattered cattle. The big cowboy had spent all his life in the hot and humid climes of the deep south. As such, he was ill-prepared for the dry, bitter cold of an Albertan winter. Too cold to dismount, he spent 4 long days and 3 sleepless nights freezing in the saddle as he carried out his task. On the 4th day, he returned to the ranch house, chilled to the bone. Despite his condition, he remained, as Tom Lynch put it, as cheerful as a woman with a new hat. During his next few years working at the Bar U Ranch, John Ware acquired a reputation as a fine friend and an excellent cattleman. He earned the most respect, however, for his skills as a sportsman. On Sunday afternoons, he and his fellow ranch hands would get together and engage in calf roping, steer wrestling, bronc riding, and other rodeo sports. During these friendly competitions, John Ware proved himself to be one of the best rodeo cowboys on the Canadian plains. Although he enjoyed his work at the Bar U immensely, John Ware eventually began to consider the notion of working for himself. In 1884, he decided to take the plunge. He bid farewell to his fellow cowboys and rode north to the town of Calgary, Alberta. There he filed a homestead on Sheep Creek, a waterway situated about a third of the way from the Bar U to Calgary, near present-day Turner Valley. After purchasing supplies, John Ware set to building a cabin on his new property. When he failed to complete the cabin before winter, he turned to ranch work once again. Instead of returning to the Bar U, he found employment at the nearby Corn Ranch. This establishment sat on Sheep Creek, not far from his homestead. The aristocratic Corn Hunt Club of Leicestershire, England, established it not long before to raise choice Irish horses for British gentry. John J. Barter, an ex-Hudson's Bay Company man who managed the Corn Ranch, tasked John Ware with managing the ranch's horse herd. That spring, John Ware signed on with a local militia which Fred Stimson established in order to defend the Calgary area from a potential military attack. At that time, the Canadian government was at war with Louis Riel's Métis and Cree revolutionaries. Militiamen and Mounties alike fought to quell the Northwest Rebellion in what would become central Saskatchewan. Residents of the Rocky Mountain foothills feared that the local Blackfoot might join Riel's cause and thought it best to prepare for potential hostilities. They need not have worried. The Blackfoot refused to take up arms against Canadian government forces, and the Northwest Rebellion was quickly suppressed. When life returned to normal, John Ware resumed his work at the Corn Ranch. There, he ingratiated himself with both his fellow cowboys and his blue-blooded employers. According to an article in the June 23, 1885 issue of Fort McLeod's McLeod Gazette, quote, John is not only one of the best-natured and most obliging fellows in the country, but he is one of the most shrewdest cowmen, and the man is considered pretty lucky who has him to look after his interest. The horse is not running on the prairie which John cannot ride. By the summer of 1885, John Ware divided much of his time between the Corn Ranch and his own homestead on Sheep Creek. Earlier that spring, he registered a brand for his own cattle. The symbol he chose for his brand was 9999, perhaps due to the fact that he could afford 9 head of cattle at the time. Years later, Ware reduced his brand to 999, out of concern that a 4-digit brand was excessively painful for the cow to which it was applied. The winter of 1886 was disastrous for the ranchers of what would become southern Alberta. Cattle starved to death on account of heavy snowfall, which precluded access to their food. That winter, John Ware lost half his herd. In 1891, John Barter introduced John Ware to the Lewis family, a black family recently arrived in Calgary from Ontario. Ware immediately took a fancy to the Lewis's eldest daughter, Mildred. That Christmas, Ware asked Mildred to be his wife. The young lady accepted the proposal, and the two were married on February 29, 1892, in Calgary's First Baptist Church. An article in the Calgary Tribune claimed that, quote, probably no man in the district has a greater number of warm personal friends than the groom. The following year, on March 9, 1893, Mildred gave birth to their first child, Amanda Nettie Janet. She was the first of 5 children John and Mildred had together. For 9 happy years, John and Mildred raised their family on the ranch at Sheep Creek. The Ware family was well liked by local ranchers, Mildred being a gracious host, and John always willing to lend a helping hand to a neighbor in need. Ever since the completion of the Canadian Pacific Railway in 1885, settlers from Europe and Eastern Canada began streaming into the Canadian prairies, hoping to secure for themselves and their families a piece of the so-called last best West. These newcomers often found themselves competing for land with old-time ranchers. In order to avoid such competition, John Ware decided to rebuild his ranch on a more remote piece of real estate. In 1902, he relocated his family to a stretch of land along the Red Deer River near what is now Dutchess, a village situated just north of Brooks, Alberta. 1902 was a year of tragedy for John Ware and his family. Not long after moving to their new home on the Red Deer River, Mildred gave birth to twin boys. Sadly, one of them passed away shortly thereafter. Mildred was severely weakened by the affair and would never fully recover her health. Shortly after the birth, the Red Deer River flooded and washed away the Wares' home. John and his family packed their belongings and relocated along a tributary of the river, which had come to be known as Ware Creek. That winter, Mildred came down with typhus and pneumonia. Although John rode for 7 hours through a raging blizzard in order to get medicine for his sick wife, his efforts were in vain. Mildred passed away on March 30th, 1905. In the wake of his wife's passing, a bereaved John Ware sent his youngest children to live with Mildred's mother in the town of Blairmore in the Crow's Nest Pass. 5 months later, while out riding with his eldest son, his horse stepped in a badger hole and fell on top of him, killing him instantly. His subsequent funeral in Calgary was the largest the town had ever seen. The cowboy's eulogy went thus: John Ware was a man with beautiful skin. Every human skin is as beautiful as the character of the person who wears it. To know John Ware was to know a gentleman, one of God's gentlemen. Never again will I see a colored skin as anything but lovely. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more Canadian content in the future, please subscribe to this channel.
All right, y'all. So that was the second man on the docket for us to learn a little bit of history about John Ware. So I don't know if you guys have heard about John Ware before or learned this history before, but it's fun to learn together. And so basically, from what we have seen, American-born man became a legendary Canadian cowboy, mastered the rugged terrain of Alberta, proving that our culture of resilience and skills knows no borders. He branded his cattle with 4 9s to claim his place in the country that tried to make him a ghost. Now, when we talk about current day 2026 struggles, like I said, we're currently in a war over educational segregation. Policy shifts in 2026 are attempting to strip back Black pioneers like Ware from textbooks to make us feel like guests in the West. Our fight today is for truth in education and history, protecting the historical brand so no politician can delete any Black person's contribution to the very soil that we all stand on. So we can be proud of that, y'all, and rest in peace to John Ware. He is deceased. But we will be getting into the next Black man for this live that we'll be talking about will be Bayard Rustin, and we'll talk about the architect of the movement. But before we get into that, I have to take a quick song break, y'all. After this song break, we'll get right into the video. I'll be right back, y'all. Thank you for joining and thank you for listening.
Oh, what a legacy. What a weight to carry now. The foundations were laid in the red clay and dust, in the spirits of giants, in the God that we trust. From the islands to the prairies, across the deep blue, where the fruit of the seeds that these great men once threw, they stood for us. On their shoulders we stand, with the sky in our reach, living out the legacy they live to teach. Yo, I'm talking Dr. Moody Hill in London with a vision. Broke the color bar with surgical precision. Found a league of people stood tall against the hate. A Jamaican son in Britain, opening up the gate. Then we ride to the north where the cold wind blows. John Ware on the saddle where the wild grass grows. A cowboy in Alberta, 4 9s branded deep. A promise of excellence he was destined to keep. Right on, John. It's a live legacy. It's alive, yeah. Legacy. Flowing like a river to the deep green sea. From the Congo to the crown, we finally free. It's alive. Legacy. It's alive. Legacy. Yeah. Now see, Bayard Rustin, the architect of the march, building up the movement, he was the cornerstone arch. Non-violent warrior, strategist of the soul. He kept the dream moving, he kept us on the road. Then we go to the Congo, Patrice Lumumba's cry. Independence for the African under the sun in the sky. He gave his life for the soil, for the diamond and the gold. A story of a martyr that'll forever be told. Free the Congo. Zumbi warrior of Palmares, defending the jungle, breaking the snare. Next Pierre, law in his hand, protecting the pan, the soul of the land. John the rose, the word is the light. New beacon burning through the dark of the night. They used the law, used the pen, used the drum and the pan to prove the divinity within every Black man. From the Brazilian forest to the London street walk, it's more than just history. It's the way that we talk, it's the way that we lead, it's the way that we rise. The fire of the ancestors is bright in our eyes. We won't forget your names. We see you, Dr. Moody. We see you. Right on, John Ware. Keep marching, Rustin. Keep marching, speak the truth. Lumumba, speak it. Fight on. I say, yeah, the legacy is live. The legacy is here.
All right, y'all. So thanks for rocking with me with that quick song break. So now we're going to go ahead and, like I said, we're going to get into a third man of the live for our history segment today. So we'll be talking about Bayard Rustin, who was born in 1912 and did pass in 1987, the architect of the movement. So as far as the global history, based in the United States, Rustin's influence reached the world. He was a master of nonviolent logistics, teaching the tactics that would inspire movements across the globe. He fought for a labor movement that recognized the value of every worker, regardless of their status. Now in 2026, we're still having some struggles. We see Rustin's fight in the gig economy and digital labor, which is what we have now during digital times. In 2026, we have Black creators and service workers power the global economy through apps, yet they remain invisible majorities without benefits. The policy fights for an algorithmic labor right, ensuring that architects of culture and engines of the economy aren't separated from the wealth that they actually create. So let's go ahead and get into a little bit of the history and learn a bit about Bayard Rustin. And let's watch it together, y'all. I'll meet y'all in the chat.
This year marks the 60th anniversary of the historic March on Washington. And while we recall the images and the impact, we may not remember some of those who helped turn the dream into reality, which brings us to Bayard Rustin and Martha Teichner.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivering his I Have a Dream speech. The sea of peaceful people, 250,000, black and white together. Say March on Washington, this is the snapshot history has saved from that August day in 1963. Now, look there, the man just behind Dr. King. He's Bayard Rustin. Who, you say? Bayard Rustin, the strategist who organized the march, a singular transformative moment for the civil rights movement.
The first demand is that we have effective civil rights legislation, no compromise, no filibuster.
At the end of the march, he read a list of demands, but who remembers? Today, it's as if his name has been erased.
What do you say?
Everybody needs to know who this man is. He should be taught in every school.
George C. Wolfe is trying to make that happen. How do you think we should regard Bayard Rustin?
As an American hero who not only contributed heavily to one of the most significant, peaceful demonstrations that this has ever happened in this country, but a man who also wrote the book on how to stage such an event.
Lord, I hope and pray they come today.
Wolfe is the director of Rustin. A producer of the film is Higher Ground, former President and First Lady Barack and Michelle Obama's production company.
Our new offices. The third floor is uninhabitable, so we'll be all on top of each other down here.
In theaters this week, on Netflix, November 17th, the film stars Coleman Domingo as Bayard Rustin.
We are going to put together the largest peaceful protest in the history of this nation.
It tells the story behind the march, officially the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. This was the real office where Rustin and a small staff pulled the march together in less than 2 months. The Harlem brownstone called the Utopia Neighborhood Clubhouse.
Bayard was the real general here, and he acted like a general, telling us all what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. You needed an organizer, but you needed somebody with charisma to make you want to follow him. That was his gift.
Eleanor Holmes Norton, Washington, D.C.'s delegate in Congress, then a student at Yale Law School, was tasked with finding buses to bring people to the march.
What did it feel like that day?
It was the most gratifying day I can ever remember. Without him, there wouldn't have been the march. Without the march, there wouldn't have been the movement. Without the movement, you wouldn't have had the 64 Civil Rights Act, the 65 Voting Rights Act.
That's pretty big.
That's as big as it gets, I think.
The week after the march, there he was on the cover of Life magazine. Absolutely. So how could a man that important be marginalized?
Bayard was one of these people that had a lot of baggage. He was a member of the Young Communist League when he was young. He was a pacifist during World War II, went to jail, and he was a gay man.
Walter Nagel was his partner for 10 years before Rustin's death in 1987 at 75.
Being gay was kind of like the nail in the coffin. So I think it had a tremendous impact on his ability to rise within the movements where he worked.
On the day that I was born Black, I was also born a homosexual.
Here's the man who convinced Martin Luther King to embrace nonviolence as a tactic. Yes, Bayard Rustin, fired by his close friend.
We thank you for your many years of service.
The great civil rights leader of the United States. This is a homophobic society, we have to remember, that King is living in. And he fears blowback on the movement, on the civil rights movement. He fears blowback on himself.
Michael Long has written extensively about Rustin. Where did Bayard Rustin's pacifism and interest in nonviolence come from?
From his grandmother primarily, Julia Rustin. She reared him in Westchester, Pennsylvania.
His grandmother was a Quaker.
When somebody asked him why he did what he did, he would often say, because I'm a Quaker and because I believe in equality, human dignity, the unity of the human family, and peace.
Nobody knows the trouble I see.
That's Bayard Rustin, singing on an album of spirituals, and believe it or not, Elizabethan songs. He collected art, antiques, walking sticks. The same Bayard Rustin whose involvement in nonviolent protest got him beaten. He was arrested over 20 times, jailed.
After the March on Washington, Rustin makes the case that activists should move from street protests to the corridors of power and practice politics.
But the movement didn't necessarily see eye to eye with Rustin on that strategy for going forward.
No.
He was opposed to the Black Power movement and even Black Studies programs, arguing they further isolated Black people. And it all cost him. But now, history has begun to take another look at Bayard Rustin.
This was symbolic of kind of bringing Bayard in from the shadows where he had been for so many years and acknowledging his contribution.
In 2013, 50 years after the March on Washington, Bayard Rustin was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Barack Obama.
Today, we honor Bayard Rustin's memory by taking our place in his march towards true equality. What I thought was important, and Michelle and I, it's the reason that we were interested in this story, was this reminds us that the fight for justice, one group of people or another group of people, it's often in tandem.
And I love this. I love this video. And speaking about Bayard Rustin the most, honestly, y'all, because within this historical teaching, it's showing us, right, what we really need to pay attention to and stick to and gravitate to is that we all are unique. We all are different. We're different races. We're different genders, different heritage and background, different spiritual and religious beliefs. And we may be different gender identity or sexual preference, whatever, right? But it doesn't mean that we cannot bind together and fight for what is necessary to fight for, that we need as the human race of people. Because at the core, despite all of those differences that we may have that I believe make us unique, at the core, the foundational principles of what we all need and we all want is all the same, right? And so I just love seeing, historically and even, presently, that there's so many of us that are speaking the same way, that are fighting and moving and marching in the same direction for the same fundamental principles and things that we need as human beings. And it has been done in the past, and it continues to be done here presently. And that's what I think is really important and beautiful, right? And so when it comes to the history behind Bayard Rustin, I think that, for most of us, a lot of people probably didn't even know who he was. You know what I'm saying? But now we're learning the history of who he was, what he did, how important he was. And then also, people are now saying, oh, wait, okay. Oh, he was a homosexual man. Yes, he was. Yes, he was. And that makes no difference. So it makes no difference if you're homosexual, if you're transsexual, if you're heterosexual, any of that, right? Because when we're fighting for the greater good for all of us and what we need as people, we're fighting for human rights, despite any of those differences. You know what I'm saying? Like, I hope that makes sense. You know what I mean? And so I love the fact that I wanted to add that in there, because not just of the monumental and, what I'm saying, the great and important things that he did fighting alongside MLK Jr., but also the fact that, you can show people like, it don't matter. You can be, you know what I'm saying, under the umbrella of the LGBTQIA plus community, homosexual, transsexual, whatever. We're all fighting in the same direction if we are fighting for the human rights, the whole principle of being human, things that we need as humans, our freedoms, you know what I'm saying, our comforts. And that's why I wanted to bring that to the forefront today, because I know a lot of times things get tossed around and things get said, and we're not going to get into all of that, but it's not worth speaking on, right? Because there is people, you got to understand that no, we're not saying that that's a issue. We're not saying that that's a problem. We're not disliking each other because of these differences. We love each other because of these differences and these uniquenesses that we have, right? And we know there can be nasty work and things can start happening, but when we talking about like history, when we talking about us standing as a united front as human beings, those differences are, you know what I'm saying? Like, when it comes to that, are not important. Now, they're important when it comes to respect. We want to respect each other, you know what I mean, and love each other despite those differences. But when it comes to like fighting for what's right, for human rights, all of us can do it. And we can stand side by side, shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand while we do it. Because at the core, as a human, all of our needs are the same at the core, really. You know what I mean? But anyway, let me continue on with this video, y'all. And shout out to Barack Obama. I love me some Barack Obama. It's sad that he completed all eight years. I wish he would come back. I wish he could come back for real, because I really love the times that we were living in when Barack was president. But anyway, that's on the political side, y'all. Y'all know I'll have a live about that another day. But let's get back to the history. All right, let's get back into it, y'all. I'm gonna meet y'all in the chat.
We have to figure out, how do we lift up all people?
The former president sat down with us last week to discuss Rustin and the film he co-produced about him. You were an organizer before you were a politician.
Yeah. To see somebody who could bring the kind of strategic sense that helped to organize some of the seminal moments in the early civil rights movement. To learn about someone like that did inspire me. Now, I have to make a very clear caveat here. I never was able to organize as good as he, but it did get me thinking about my own role as somebody who could maybe work at a grassroots level and change the country from the bottom up.
Do you think after the film comes out worldwide, people will no longer say Bayard who?
My hope is that he gets the credit that is due to him. And what I hope Rustin achieves is to remind this new young generation of activists how much they can accomplish.
Bayard Rustin has been credited with coining the phrase, speaking truth to power. He did that all his life.
All right, y'all. So that was just a wrap up with Bayard Rustin. Okay. And so, and we were talking, y'all were saying some things in the chat as well. Like, I absolutely agree. I'm gonna go through some of the comments and stuff here as well. And so, basically, like, and that's the craziest part that I think that we're experiencing. Like you said, V-Love, the UN had a vote yesterday. 3 countries didn't want to denounce slavery, and the U.S. was one of the 3. And that's embarrassing. That's embarrassing, and it's not a good feeling. And, it's not a reflection of U.S. people, or anybody who just happens to reside or be a United States, citizen or American or whatever, right? Like, we come on now. Of course we don't feel that way. But then it's like you have this representation of your country and what it's deciding to stand for and speak up, I just can't, y'all. I can't. It gives me really anxiety and a headache, and I'm just like over it. But yeah, that is disgusting. That is disgusting that in 2026, we're still experiencing these things. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised because we see who we have in leadership. We see who is in position, right? That's supposed to be leading this country. Child, leading us into the gutter and the trash can. But that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother lot, And I don't like it. I don't like one bit of it. And there's a lot of us that don't, and it just seems like a lot of it sometimes is out of our hands. Again, that's a political conversation, child. But we will keep moving forward with our history lives. So now we got to go ahead and get into the next man, the next Black man historically that we'll be talking about is Patrice Lumumba. And he was born in 1925 and passed in 1961. So not a very long life. But this is the voice of sovereignty. So when it comes to the global history, the first prime minister of the independent Congo, Lumumba was a visionary for all of Africa, believing that our resources should benefit our children. And not me speaking from Africa, but this is what he was speaking as an African man from Africa, how he felt and what he was fighting for. Now, he was assassinated because he refused to let the global power separate a people from their own wealth. Now, in 2026, we see the Green Revolution. It's built on environmental racism. The world wants clean energy for the West, but they accept dirty mining in Africa for cobalt. This is a global race separation where one part of the world breathes clean air while other brothers and sisters have to inhale, or pass away in holes of polluted air because of levels of power. We are fighting for global supply chain accountability. And that is something that the fight is still current in this day. But historically, we'll see as I go ahead and get this video up for y'all so we can watch together. This is a fight that has been happening for a very, very long period of time. Okay. And so let's go ahead and get into this video next. We'll watch this together and I'll meet y'all in the chat. And then after this, we will have to take another quick song break after that. But yeah, you know, a lot of times history just seems to continue to repeat itself. And if we pay close enough attention, we can see exactly how that is happening. But let's get into this video. I'll meet y'all over in the chat.
Malcolm X called him the greatest black man who ever walked the African continent, while Belgium and the US plotted his assassination. His name was Patrice Lumumba, the first Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo. He's considered by many a martyred hero, a symbol of anti-imperialism and Pan-African unity. This is the story of how Lumumba came to power, dreaming of a better future for the Congo and Africa, and how that dream quickly turned into a nightmare as he was arrested and murdered in January of 1961, less than 7 months after independence.
La République du Congo a été proclamée et notre pays est maintenant entre les mains de ses propres enfants. Nous allons établir ensemble la justice sociale et assurer que les terres de notre patrie profitent véritablement à ses enfants. Voilà, sire, Excellences, Mesdames, Messieurs, mes chers compatriotes, mes frères de lutte, mes frères de race, voilà ce que j'ai voulu vous dire. Vive l'indépendance de l'unité africaine, vive le Congo indépendant et souverain.
Lumumba was born in 1925 in the village of Onalua in Kasai province in the Congo. At the time his country, the DRC, was a Belgian colony, the Belgian Congo. He was a member of the small Batata ethnic group. Young Lumumba attended a Protestant mission school. After that, he went on to work in the city of Kindu Port-en-Pan, where he began to write essays and poems for Congolese journals. Lumumba at the time actually applied for and received Belgium's citizenship, after which he moved to the capital Leopoldville, now known as Kinshasa. He started working as a postal clerk and went on to become an accountant in the post office in Stanleyville, now known as Kinsigane. During this time, he was still actively contributing to the Congolese press. His entry into politics started at the grassroots level. In 1955, Lumumba became regional president of a Congolese trade union of government employees, as well as an active member of the Belgian Liberal Party in the Congo. The trade union he was running was not affiliated to the two main Belgian federations, much to the irony of Belgium's colonial administrators. In 1956, he was invited by the Ministry of Colonies to a study tour in Belgium, which he attended only to be arrested upon his arrival back to the Congo, with charges of embezzling money from the post office. He served a 12-month sentence, and once free, Lumumba launched the Congolese National Movement, or the MNC, the first nationwide political party in the Congo. In 1958, the same year he launched this party, Lumumba attended the first All-African People's Conference in Accra, Ghana. His vision and Pan-African vocabulary impressed the gathering and turned eyes across the continent. Taking notice of the nationalist fervor on the rise across Africa, and with anti-colonial independence struggles at full throttle, the Belgian government announced local elections in December 1959. Lumumba's MNC wanted to boycott the race, deeming it an illegitimate Belgian attempt at installing a puppet government. Many Congolese boycotted in protest, and the Belgian authorities responded with repression. 30 Congolese were killed in Stanleyville, Kinsigane, and Lumumba was arrested on charges of inciting a riot. The MNC changed its tactics and decided to join the election race. They claimed a sweeping victory with 90% of the vote and demanded the release of Lumumba in order to discuss the formation of a government and national independence. Their demands were met, and Lumumba became the first prime minister of his country in 1960. On Independence Day, while the King of Belgium was attending and the world was watching, Lumumba delivered a powerful speech that would live on as a benchmark for the anti-imperial struggle in Africa and the world.
L'indépendance du Congo, si elle est proclamée aujourd'hui dans l'entente avec la Belgique, pays ami, avec qui nous traitons d'égal à égal, nul Congolais digne de ce nom ne pourra jamais oublier que c'est par la lutte qu'elle a été conquise. Une lutte en laquelle nous n'avons ménagé ni nos forces, ni nos privations, ni nos souffrances, ni notre sang.
Immediately after Congolese independence and the start of Lumumba's prime ministership, units of the army rebelled, largely because of objections to their Belgian commander. Belgium sent in 6,000 troops, announcing that they were in place for the protection of Belgian nationals in the country. A day later, a man named Moise Tshombe took advantage of the power struggle and proclaimed the secession of the mineral-rich province of Katanga from the Congo, with support from the Belgian government and mining companies. In reality, it was a treacherous move. The Belgian troops protected and supported Tshombe's rebellion to secure its colonial cash cow and undermine Lumumba's rule. Running out of options, Lumumba reached out to the United Nations to expel Belgian forces and help restore internal order. Lumumba requested UN troops to suppress the rebellion in Katanga, but the UN forces were not authorized to do so under their mandate. The United States and France also refused to budge. Frustrated with the West, Lumumba tilted the balance and reached out to the Soviet Union, requesting planes to fly his army to Katanga. Lumumba, a skilled statesman, also assembled African heads of state in Leopoldville, Kinshasa, asking for their full support in his efforts to quell the rebellion and unify the DRC. Lumumba's ambition was to free the Congo and Africa of foreign colonial influence. He advocated a theory of positive neutralism, meaning that his administration would focus on returning to African values rather than using any imported ideology from the East or the West. But by turning to the Soviet Union, he had now crossed the Cold War red line, and the presence of Soviet military in the heart of Africa, gaining influence in a resource-rich country, made Western powers uncomfortable. To put it in perspective, the US had actually used uranium from the Congo when it dropped bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So the Congo was very important for the US and its Western allies. But Lumumba's problems did not end there. Internally, he was up against President Kasavubu, who did not approve of Lumumba's actions and wanted a moderate Westerner. The president hired Lumumba from his 5th of September 1960, after less than 3 months in power, and placed him under house arrest. Lumumba rejected the dismissal on legal grounds, and the two were trapped in a power struggle. A few days later, Army General Mobutu Sese Seko, backed by Belgium and the USA, stepped in and took control of the government. Mobutu reached a working agreement with Kasavubu, and the UN had decided to recognize the legitimacy of the Kasavubu-Mobutu government. When Lumumba tried to escape home confinement, Mobutu had Lumumba arrested again and sent him to Katanga's secessionist forces. Lumumba, alongside two of his associates, Joseph Okito and Maurice Mpolo, were treated deplorably while being held captive. Eventually, on 17th January 1961, the three men were executed by a firing squad with the full knowledge and collaboration of the Belgians. Initially, their bodies were thrown in shallow graves, but later, under the direction of Belgian officers, the bodies were dug up, hacked into pieces, and dissolved in acid. The Katangan government initially tried to hide his death and provide a fake version of events. Their version was quickly disputed, but it took decades to provide the proof of what had happened. Lumumba's death was a shock for Africa and the global anti-colonial movement. In 2002, Belgium apologized to the Congolese people for its role in Lumumba's assassination. In 2013, the US State Department admitted that President Dwight Eisenhower had authorized Lumumba's murder, but said the plan was not carried out. In addition, records show that French diplomats in Africa at the time of Lumumba's murder were calling directly for the elimination of the Congolese leader. And so there is no way around the fact that there was Western involvement in his assassination, and at the highest level. His death still haunts Congo today, but his legacy lives on, whether it is through references in popular culture, such as rap music, film, and theater. There's even a public square in Belgium in his name. Lumumba will forever be remembered as one of the fathers of independence of the Congo, one of the most visionary African leaders, and the man who did not shy away from defying and challenging colonialism, not for his sake, but the sake of his people, a nobility that cost him his life.
All right, y'all. So this is one of, and yes, Imani, for sure, it's definitely triggering. But this is one of, I think, the most important and relevant historical individuals and stories that I think ties into a lot of things that we see happening, like literally today. And so basically, as we wrap this up and we go into the details of what, everything that we heard is that in 1960, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC, was the jewel of the Belgian colonial empire, not because of its people, but because of its dirt, aka soil. The soil was and is the richest on the planet. which is filled with gold, diamonds, and high-grade uranium, the same uranium used for, let's just say, the bombs or weapons that were used during World War II. Very interesting. We're in World War III. When Lumumba stood up for the Independence Day, he didn't just ask for a new flag. He demanded economic sovereignty. He famously said the Congo's independence is a decisive step towards the liberation of the whole African continent. He knew that as long as foreign corporations controlled the mines, the independence was a lie. He was unalived in 1961 because he was a threat to the global supply chain of that era. The powers of the time could not allow a black man to decide the price of the world's most precious minerals. Now we have 2026 and digital colonialism. The world has shifted from steam and oil to now green energy and artificial intelligence. But the heart of this revolution is still in the Congo. So let's talk about the cobalt crisis, the smartphones that we use, the electronic vehicles that some of us may drive, and batteries, and the servers that are running the AI that we use today rely on cobalt and coltan. And over 70% of the world's cobalt comes from the DRC. So what is the policy stance? Well, in 2026, we see a new scramble for Africa. Global tech giants are bypassing local governments to secure direct mining rights, often leading to displacement and human rights abuses. They also have the race separation. There is a literal separation between the digital elite in the West, who enjoy clean green tech, and some black bodies in the Congo that are still there, who are being poisoned by the extraction process. This is environmental racism on a global scale. So we can do some compare and contrast, right? So in 1960s, we had Lubamba's era. In the 2026, we have our era. Now, the primary resources, uranium, diamonds, rubber, that was all back then in the 1960s. What do we have now? Cobalt, coltan, lithium. Now, when they speak about enemy, back in 1960s, it was the colonial empires, Belgium, United Kingdom. When we talk about 2026, we have global tech monopolies and private militias. What are their tactics? Back in the 60s, the 1960s, it was physical occupation and assassination. Today, we have debt traps, green supply chain distractions. And what is the mess? Back in the 1960s, it was brain civilization. Today, it's supposed to be saving the planet or going green. So as you can see, there's a lot of comparisons when it comes to how things have went down in the past and historically, and some of the things that we are still experiencing to this day. And so, if we pay attention to it and put the pieces together, we can see exactly what is happening and how history continues to repeat itself. But anyway, let's take another quick song break. After that song break, we will be right back. We have 3 more gentlemen that we're going to talk about, black men, historically. And we'll be talking about next, Zumbi dos Palmares, from 1655 to 1995, the warrior of self-defense. We will get into that right after this quick song break. I will be right back, y'all. Thank you so much for joining and rocking with me. I'll talk to y'all in just a bit.
gentle hand to keep a spirit warm, a plate of food, a mind that's free to learn, a simple piece, a righteous wage to earn. These are the needs, the bedrock and the base, the sacred ground of the whole human race. But the screaming and selling something cheap, while the real world babies cry themselves to sleep. We are human, blood and bone and soul, with a right to be loved, a right to be made whole. This is our story, this is our sacred song. In the eyes of the Creator is where we all belong. We are human, worth more than they can price, beyond the hate bruises and the loaded dice. We're human, worth more than they can price, beyond the hateful whispers and the loaded dice. They're painting pictures, twisted and real, teaching our children how they ought to feel. Their values in the label on your shoes, or the filtered life you desperately choose. They magnify the hate, they celebrate the greed, and plant a poison, a suffocating weed. We gotta reach our children, pull them from the glow, and show them a beauty that the media don't know. Yo, check the vision, the mission of the television, spitting division, a mental prison. Got the youth chasing likes, addicted to the feed, ignoring the hunger, the fundamental need. They building paper idols on a digital stage, putting our future daughters in a virtual cage. Now we gotta break the cycle, gotta cut the cord. The real word is powerful, mightier than the sword. So we teach them about their history, teach them about their grace, teach them about the power in every single face. We are human, blood and bone and soul, with a right to be loved, a right to be made whole. This is our story, this is our sacred song. In the eyes of the Creator, it's where we all belong. We are human, worth more than they can price, beyond the hateful whispers and the loaded dice. Human, worth more than they can price, beyond the hateful whispers and the loaded dice. We will build a world where every voice is heard and valued. Yeah. And truth is not a whisper, but a mighty, thundering word. A word of justice, a word of peace, a promise that the fight will never cease. This ain't just a track, this a call to action for every mother, father, every single fraction of the community holding it down on the ground. Time to get loud, make a revolutionary sound. Look your child in the eye, tell them that they matter, tell them their spirit's something that no lie can shatter. Tell them knowledge is the weapon, love is the shield, and the truth is the harvest we gonna grow in this field. Yeah! Yes, we are. Teach the children, near and far. Let them know their sacred work for every single soul on this a right to live, a gift to get.
All right, y'all. So thanks for rocking with me through that quick little song break. We're about to go ahead and get into the next gentleman of the live that we'll be talking about today for our history lesson here. And so we have Zumbi dos Palmares from 1955 to 1995. the warrior of self-defense. So the global history story reads as leader of the Quilombo dos Palmares in the Brazilian jungle. Zumbi led a massive self-sustaining kingdom of escaped enslaved people, proving that African leadership and community building could thrive anywhere it was planted. Now in 2026, we're still having struggles because we're fighting against financial and digital segregation. In 2026, social credit and biased banking softwares are the new walls that are built to trap us. Like Zumbi, we are building digital quilombos, Black-owned tech platforms, and decentralized financial networks to separate our survival from systems designed to exploit us. So let's go ahead and get into some of the history, y'all. I'm going to get this video up on the screen and we will listen to this together. And y'all know, per usual, I will meet y'all over in the chat. Let's hear a little bit about this. And y'all have to forgive me for pronunciations, y'all, because sometimes I am butchering some of these names and words. So I do apologize. But let's go ahead and get into this video. I will meet y'all over in the chat.
During the 1600s, an expansive autonomous settlement called Palmares reached its height in northeastern Brazil. It was founded and led by people escaping from slavery, also called Maroons. In fact, it was one of the world's largest Maroon communities, its population reaching beyond 10,000, and its citizens were at constant war with colonial forces. The records we have about Palmares mainly come from biased Dutch and Portuguese sources, but historians have managed to piece much of its story together. During the transatlantic slave trade, which began in the 1500s, nearly half of all enslaved African people were sent to Portugal's American colony, Brazil. Some escaped and sought shelter in Brazil's interior regions, where they formed settlements called mocambos or quilombos. Fugitives from slavery probably arrived in the Northeast in the late 1500s. By the 1660s, their camps had consolidated into a powerful confederation known today as the Quilombo of Palmares. It consisted of a central capital linking dozens of villages, which specialized in particular agricultural goods or served as military training grounds. Citizens of Palmares, or Palmaristas, were governed by a king and defended by an organized military. African people and Brazilian-born Black and indigenous people all came seeking refuge. They collectively fished, hunted, raised livestock, planted orchards, and grew crops like cassava, corn, and sugarcane. They also made use of the abundant palm trees for which Palmares was named, turning palm products into butter, wine, and light. Palmaristas crafted palm husks into pipes and leaves into mats and baskets. They traded some of these goods with Portuguese settlers for products like gunpowder and salt. In turn, settlers avoided Palmares raids, during which they'd seize weapons and take captives. The Portuguese were concerned with other invading imperialists, but regarded indigenous uprisings and Palmares as their internal threats. Palmares endangered the very institution of slavery, the foundation of Brazil's economy. During the 1670s, the Portuguese escalated their attacks. By this time, Ganga Zumba was Palmares' leader. He ruled from Macaco, which functioned as the capital. His allies and family members governed the other villages, with women playing crucial roles in operation and defense. As they fought the Portuguese, Palmaristas used the landscape to their advantage. Camouflaged and built in high places, their mocambos offered superior lookouts. They constructed hidden ditches, lined with sharp stakes that swallowed unsuspecting soldiers, and false roads that led to ambushes. They launched counterattacks under the cover of night and were constantly abandoning and building settlements to elude the Portuguese. In 1678, after years of failed attacks, the Portuguese offered to negotiate a peace treaty with Ganga Zumba. The terms they agreed upon recognized Palmares' independence and the freedom of anyone born there. However, the treaty demanded that Palmares pledge loyalty to the crown and return all past and future fugitives from slavery. Many Palmaristas dissented, among them Zumbi, Ganga Zumba's nephew, a rising leader himself. Before long, Ganga Zumba was killed, likely by a group affiliated with his nephew. As Palmares' new leader, Zumbi rejected the treaty and resumed resistance for another 15 years. But in February of 1694, the Portuguese captured the capital after a devastating siege. Zumbi escaped, but they eventually found and ambushed him. And on November 20th, 1695, Portuguese forces killed Zumbi. His death was not the end of Palmares, but it was a crushing blow. After years of warfare, there were far fewer rebels in the area. Those who remained rallied around new leaders and maintained a presence, however small, through the 1760s. Though Palmares is no more, thousands of other quilombos persist to this day. November 20th, the day of Zumbi's death, is celebrated across Brazil as the Day of Black Consciousness. But Zumbi was just one of many Palmaristas. We only know some of their names, but their fight for freedom echoes centuries later. 95 years after Zumbi's death, a group of enslaved people rebelled to free themselves from French colonial rule and created the first nation to permanently abolish slavery. Get to know the story of the revolutionary who helped them secure their freedom with this video.
All right, y'all. So that was a little bit there on Zumbi dos Palmares. And I wanted to go ahead and bring that forth to the history lesson for some of these Black men globally, right? Like all over the globe that have, fought and made a difference and actually been, a very important staple within history. But we don't always get to learn about them or hear about them because sometimes it gets washed away. You know what I mean? It gets washed away, or people don't see these individuals and what they've brought forth, to the change of how we are living today, what they did back in the day, as important. They haven't seen, and they will not continue to see the importance of what these people stood for, what they fought for, and what they represented historically. And a lot of us, I feel like we should just do a little bit more research on that, and really dive into some of these histories so we can have not just an understanding of, how long a lot of these fights have been going on. We're talking about 1655 and 1695, like from 1655 to 1695. And the fact that some of the fights and the things that happened back in the 1655 year is still going on in 2026. To me, I just think that when we see stuff like that, it's almost sad. It's almost like, it's not almost sad. It is sad. It's sad and it's depressing that so many years down the line, we are still fighting the same struggles and the same battles. Now, one of the things that I also see, and I'll be doing a little bit of that on my channel as well, is I want to, and I'm going to do it on this live at the end. I have something prepared for the end. But what I want to do is I want to connect the dots, right? Connect the dots of some of these historic, brave individuals that were fighting the good fight for the same things that we literally seem like we're still fighting for today. And during those years, it was that person. During our present time, we have other individuals that are in place fighting the best way that they can for these same struggles, right? For these same battles. And so that's something that I always pay attention to, like the correlation between our past history and our current, But a lot of times when you do pay attention to that and you pull up that information and you read and you research about it, it does it does make you feel away. Like, we would have thought we have gotten past this. We wouldn't think that history is something that's just going to continue repeating itself, especially when it comes to the dark side of history and the struggles of history. We would assume that, these fights, right, and these leaders that have, literally put a lot of time, their lives on the line to make our future that we're living in right now different, that unfortunately somehow it still remains to be the same. And I think it's hurtful because it almost makes it seem like their fight and their sacrifice and the struggles that they went through were all for nothing, all for us to still remain in the same place where they were, or return back in the same predicament that they were in. And I know there's some things that are different that kind of, I think, put a blindfold over our eyes to make us think that there's so much change and progression, because there's small things here and there, which typically, honestly, if you ask me, come in the form of just material things, honestly. But real like structures as far as systems and mindsets and things of that nature, a lot of that has continued to remain the same, despite the extreme struggles that a lot of these people have went through to change the mindset, to change the foundation, to change the structure of systems. For whatever reason, now we are seeing like, we right back and start. So, I can't be sure, y'all. I can't be sure. Y'all let me know what y'all think and what y'all feel about that. But let's go ahead and get to the last one, y'all. We are moving towards the 2-hour mark. I think I can get through this one pretty decently quickly. So we will aim for 2 hours and 30 or 45 minutes and then end after that. I don't want to keep y'all for too long. But let's go ahead and get into the last historical individual male that I wanted to talk about within this live. And we'll be talking about, well, two. We'll combine those. But we'll be talking about John LaRose, who was born in 1927 and did pass in 2006, and Lennox Pierre, who was born in 1928 and passed in 1994. These are the guardians of the culture. So the global story goes as such. The Trinidadian duo proved that our culture is our strongest bond. Lennox Pierre protected the steel pan. John LaRose moved to London and founded New Beacon Books. They linked the Caribbean struggle to the UK struggle, proving that the Black mind is a global force. In 2026, we still are having and seeing some of these struggles. We are currently battling with the automation of the Black soul. In 2026, generative AI is harvesting Black art, voices, and rhythms to sell them back to us. We are fighting for culture, intellectual property. Like Pierre defended the pan, we must defend our human DNA in art from being colonized by a machine or a robot or a system that is set out and created to replace our very existence. And so, y'all, let's go ahead and get into this final video right here when we talk about these two individuals. And like I said, this will probably be the longest of the two because it is two men that will be spoke about that is tied into one video. So we got like half is about one, half is about the other. So it's going to seem like it's long, but we got two men wrapped up here in one video that I found here to play for y'all. So let's go ahead and listen to this together, and I will meet y'all in the chat per usual, and we will do our final thoughts and feelings about all of this at the end. So let's go ahead and get into it, and I'll see y'all in the chat.
The names Lennox Oscar Pierre and John LaRose may not resonate with many in Trinidad and Tobago today. After all, Lennox was born in 1919 and passed away in July 1993. John, at 8 years Lennox's junior, was born in 1927. The fact that John had been living and working in London from 1961 means that even though he passed in February 2006, he is not now a household name here. So what about the lives of these two Trinidad and Tobago nationals that makes the naming of this foundation, the Lennox, Oscar Pierre, and John LaRose Foundation, so significant? In a word, everything. Yes, everything about their lives, their work, and the multifaceted contributions to Trinidad and Tobago, and, in the case of John, across the continents, is tremendously important. We want today to bridge that gap so we may come to know who they are, appreciate what they did, and benefit from the foundations that they laid down through selfless contributions which collectively exceeded 100 years. Lennox was born in Port of Spain and lived all his life in our capital city. He went to the Queen's Royal College, and he excelled on and off the field. He wrote poetry, played the violin, and sang in the All Saints Anglican Church Choir. At 18, right after leaving QRC, Lennox became articled to his father, who was a prominent black middle-class solicitor. Two of the formative elements of Lennox's life were laid down: the law and artistic expression.
The first one I'm going to do goes back to 1945. Ulrich Cross won the DFC and DSO, and we were quite elated here, and I recorded this. Posterity will learn from many a pen how well our Ulrich matched West Indian pluck and skill with all the pride of England's youth that flew in freedom's name. Its heart will glow at lofty tales of deeds beyond our ken, at novels wrought around his hero's luck. And even though poet were mute, the precious truth from tongue to tongue, the ages down will go. But this may not be born, lest someone coins some record for our children's reckoning. How bright and timely do those exploits shine, bracing a people's faith, steeling their spine, against the day all anxious natives sing, against the tasks proud nationhood enjoins.
John was born in Arima. He was Roman Catholic. At the unusually young age of 9, John won a scholarship to attend that other prestigious boys' secondary school in Port of Spain, St. Mary's College, or CIC. John then started working at Colonial Life Insurance Company, CLICO, the first locally owned insurance company founded by a black Trinidadian, Cyril Dupre, in 1936. As a very bright young man, John was part of Dupre's executive team. Nothing so far suggested that the lives of Lennox and John would become intertwined. One common thread was that they challenged the status quo and were never afraid to do so, even having regard to their relatively privileged early life. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. According to one of our comrades, Teddy Belgrave, now sadly passed on to be with Lennox and John, when Lennox became articled to his father in 1937, this was the time of the beginnings of the dustbin era of the steel band. Metallic instruments in the form of dustbin covers, old biscuit drums, motorcar hubs, etc. were being introduced to the tambu bamboo bands. Official society established a special vocabulary to describe the underclasses who engage in these unsavory activities. Cutthroats, vagabonds were a few of the milder expressions. Lennox chose to be a traitor to his fine middle-class roots and played Juve in the Carnival of 1939 with Alexander's ragtime band, the Tambu Bamboo Band of Newtown. This would start Lennox's move away from his classical musical background and towards forming an intimate relationship with the artistic expressions of the ordinary people. In the words of Dr. Errol Hill, noted playwright, academic, a close colleague of Lennox in this would start Lennox's move away from his classical musical background and towards forming an intimate relationship with the artistic expressions of the ordinary people. In the words of Dr. Errol Hill, noted playwright, academic, and a close colleague of Lennox in the 1940s, when did Lennox's transformation occur? When was it that he and others in his circle began to be aware of the richness of our native culture and how significant a role it could play in the march towards political self-government? In August 1940, Beryl McBurney appeared in a dance recital. The program, titled A Trip Through the Tropics, was the first attempt we know of to put folk and creative dances of the West Indies on the concert stage. It was a momentous occasion. It was breaking new ground, and its focus was regional, incorporating Haitian drumming, Venezuelan string music, Trinidad Shango dancing, John Buddy Williams and his orchestra of calypso fame, and among the vocalists was Edric Connor. Then, in 1943, Connor presented a program that would completely transform Lennox's life. It was called An Evening with West Indian Folk Songs and Dance. Lennox recalled that the limbo dance was the first seen on stage, and that the Gonzales Steel Band also appeared. Also, in 1943, police band master Joseph Griffith presented his Griffitharian Evening with the talented Winifred Atwell at the piano. These events were formative influences in the cultural consciousness of the young Lennox pair.
Until Edric gave the exposition of the historical development of the calypso was something there, and was something that we recognize as local culture. But you didn't see the local culture in its full perspective. To me, the Edric Connor demonstration, it was a sort of, what it was called, an evening of West Indian folk songs and dances. That was by and large the most important performance, cultural performance of the day. That entire period of the early 40s, because 43, I think Griffith gave his musical performance of his own music, right? Everything, a 2 hour,
something like 2 hours of his own music.
2 hours, everything on that program was composed by Griffith. Baritone solo, soprano solo, piano solo, right? Group singing.
And he was also dealing with his situation with being in the force and
Yeah, well, for instance, the baritone solo was, it's called God Made Darkies from a Special Mold. Darkies do the cooking, rich man eat the pie, but the day is coming when this fallacy will die.
Yeah.
And what of John LaRose? How did he come to a new cultural consciousness? A young John became active in the literary group, which was organized by notables such as Neville and Undine Giuseppe and Arnold Tomassos. It was in this environment that John was introduced to Marxism. It was also the period when he connected with Calypso. This led him to collaborate with Raymond Quavado, Attila the Hun, to write the book Kaiso, a review, subsequently published as Attila's Kaiso. John was now connected to the popular culture and to revolutionary ideas. He recalls this quite vividly.
I was introduced around that time by a friend who's one of the leading Trinidad writers. He was a poet called Giuseppe, Neville Giuseppe. And he said, "Have you read anything by Marx?" And I said, no, Marx and communism and so on, I've never heard of, I just know people denigrate these things. And he lent me a book, which was simply called Lenin. It was about the Russian Revolution.
Books were his world. Now, when it came to politics, you wouldn't believe Neville was a rank Marxist and all this sort of thing. No, I am not into that. You couldn't believe that a quiet man like Neville, but he knew his politics and so on. So much so that when John started coming around, and then John, shall I say, got into trouble. Neville regretted having, led him astray. John said, "Not at all. You have opened the world for me."
The second book he introduced me to was C.L.R. James' The History of Negro Revolt. Those two things had a tremendous impact on my life.
How then did Lennox and John meet? No better way to find out than through John speaking. I had known Lennox Spear before we became comrades in the revolutionary movement for fundamental change in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean. Before our meeting, Lennox Spear was, for me, a solicitor and who, with Jack Kelshaw, Pearl Nunez Connor, and their friends, had founded the Trinidad Youth Council, and then in the 1940s had become involved in the early steel band movement together with an unsung hero of that early movement, Carlisle Kerr. It was the arrest of Carlisle Kerr and later my own arrest at the corner of Piccadilly Street and Paul Street when I was returning home from a private informal meeting of the Workers' Freedom Movement that brought Lennox Spear and myself and the Workers' Freedom Movement together in action. 10 St. Paul Street was our headquarters and the home of Jim Barrett, a leading member of our movement. The arrest took place during the police commando raids prevalent at the time. The Workers' Freedom Movement and I were determined to confront this abuse of our civil rights. We called on others to join in this effort to protect and defend our rights. This became the beginning of the relationship, both personal and political, between Lennox Spear and our movement. Going back to Lennox's path-breaking work, Teddy Belgrave recounts, the Trinidad and Tobago Youth Council was formed in July 1944 with Lennox Spear as secretary. The cultural renaissance of this period, spurred on by the work of Connor and the Youth Council, led to the sound of the ping pong on the radio for the first time in 1947. This was Ellie Mannett playing Brahms' Lullaby on the Youth Council's Sunday evening program. The steel band wars raged during this period. The frown of society turned into an ugly scowl. The police attacked panmen with full force, spurred on by a hostile colonial press. The ruling elite made panmen an endangered species. The Youth Council decided to act and appointed Lennox Spear and Carlisle Kerr to intervene, their first responsibility being to keep out the police. Lennox by that time was a practicing solicitor and the warden in residence at the Cocorit Youth Center. Behind-the-scenes discussions and mediation led eventually to the government-appointed Canon Max Fuqua Committee, which included Spear and Kerr. Later, in April 1950, organized by Lennox Spear, Carlisle Kerr, and other officers of the Youth Council, 76 bands came together to form the Trinidad and Tobago Steel Bands Association. The first achievement of this association was to ban competitions for the next 5 years and replace them by steel band recitals. For the recital, Spear and Kerr went around to establish panyards throughout the country, listening to and selecting bands. Lennox and his violin had become a familiar sight in the invader's panyard as he sought to teach music to Ellie and others, using his novel method of numbering the notes. Out of this experience came Ellie Mannett's creation of the chromatized ping pong. Lennox Spear's labor of love bore its sweetest fruit when Trinidad Oil Steel Percussion Orchestra, TASPO, was formed to participate in the Festival of Britain in July 1951. This was the turning point in the musical development of the steel band. The country's top steel bands were invited to send 2 representatives for the formation of this national orchestra under the musical directorship of Lieutenant Joseph Griffith. The TASPO rehearsals took place at the Cocorit Youth Center. Spear's work among steel bands and steel bandsmen did not end here. Many will remember his Song of the Pan Man, one of the first locally composed test pieces for the Steel Bands Music Festival in the early 1960s. Dr. Errol Hill adds, Lennox was equally supportive of the Calypso and Calypsonians, whom he befriended and defended whenever that was necessary. So the friendship between Lennox and John was born out of a common opposition to injustice and the defense of the ordinary men and women the struggle against the status quo. John provides more details. Lennox encouraged the workers' freedom movement to join the Youth Council. I became editor and producer of its radio program, and together with Lennox Pear, we began to move the Youth Council in the direction of support for independence and socialism. We were soon engulfed by the international rivalries of the Cold War. A leading member denounced the new leadership of the council as communist and subversive, while he participated in the creation of a new national youth movement financed by the US-sponsored World Assembly of Youth and orchestrated locally by the colonial authorities. The Workers' Freedom Movement had emerged in the late 1940s from an alliance between a section of the Marxist study groups and the remnants of the Marxist-oriented Negro Welfare Cultural and Social Association, the NWCSA. This workers' grouping had led the 1937 June 19th general strike and insurrection in North Trinidad. In the person of Lennox Pear and what remained of the Youth Council, links were being forged with the most revolutionary section of the post-war radical youth movement, which had sought to influence the content of the national culture and steer Caribbean politics in the direction of independence with federation. These were the combined forces that in 1952, together with the radical trade unionists in the Trade Union Council, led by Quinton O'Connor of the Federated Workers Trade Union and John Rojas of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, to form a single political movement, the West Indian Independence Party. I, who had been General Secretary of the WFM, became General Secretary of the WIIP, Lennox Pear's chairman, and John Rojas as vice chairman. Quinton O'Connor became its treasurer, and Ali Muhammad of the Old Trinidad Sugar Estates and Factory Workers Trade Union became an executive member. This was the most dangerous ideological political opposition the colonial authorities had encountered since the 1930s. They were determined to crush it. Moreover, we were linked in our Caribbean organizational, ideological, and political perspective with the People's Progressive Party, PPP, led by Chetty Jagan and Janet Jagan. Organized with the participation of the Steel Band movement, this development terrified the British colonial authorities for the same reasons as in Guyana. Plans to derail this movement were made and implemented. Our own view is that without the crushing of this revolutionary movement, the transition to independence under the People's National Movement would not have been possible. The bedrock foundation had to be laid in those 2 decades, 1932 to 1952, for a movement to put power in the hands of those who, by their labor, produced the wealth that others put in their pockets. This basic movement could only be retarded. It could not be destroyed. After retreating and submerging itself on the political front, it re-emerged on the trade union front with victory through George Weeks and the rebels. In 1956, the WIIP had fired its last shot. John was the party's lone candidate in the elections of that year. He lost. The PNM began its long control of government. Sometime after the elections, John had to go to Venezuela with his wife Irma, who had family there, as he could find no employment at home. Then in 1961, John went to London. The plan was for him to study law and return home to continue the struggle there. The trajectories of the two comrades would now be different, yet, as we shall see, their relationship remained close. Significantly, both were anchored to the Oilfield Workers Trade Union and to George Weeks and the rebel movement. John started New Beacon Books as the first black bookshop and publishing house in the UK in 1966 with his partner, Sarah White. Lennox Oscar Pear and John LaRose not only dreamed to change the world, but walked the talk as revolutionaries, devoting their entire adult lives to that cause. In doing so, they laid a rock-solid foundation for successive generations to build upon, and a legacy of ideas and actions that few can match.
All right, y'all. So we have reached the end of the live. And that was the final video that I wanted to show you guys, just so we could, learn a little bit about these two different individuals. And so, I'll give y'all a quick, brief synopsis and breakdown, of each of those individuals that we just saw. And then I have some final statements or whatnot that I want to make before we close out the live, okay? And so when it comes down to, the history, the dream of the new beacon, that was John and Lennox. They were part of a generation of Caribbean intellectuals who realized that colonial education was designed to make them forget themselves. Lennox Pierre, the legal shields of the steel pen in the 1940s and 1950s, the steel pen was seen by the elites as noise or hooliganism. The British authorities actually tried to ban it. Now, Lennox Pierre stepped in, being a lawyer, to give these grassroots musicians a legal voice. He fought to prove that the steel pan was a sophisticated invention, the only new acoustic instrument of the 20th century. Now, John LaRose, the publisher of the Revolution, when John decided to move to London, he saw that Black writers could get published by White Houses. He founded New Beacon Books in 1966. It wasn't just, like I said earlier, a store. It was a headquarters for the Caribbean artist movement. He believed that if we didn't write our own books, someone else would write a lie about us. And isn't that something that we are seeing in modern time and current day time as well? So let's talk about the contrast, right? So from physical books to digital sovereignty, the battle over the algorithm. Modern Lennox Pierre. Lennox fought to stop the physical banning of steel pan music in the streets of the ports of Spain. Right now, we are fighting shadow banning and algorithmic suppression in 2026. Black creators often find themselves and their content suppressed by social media algorithms, while others get to just copy and paste their dances and slang for profit. Lennox Pierre fought for the right to play our music in the streets. Today, we are fighting for the right to just even be heard on social media platforms without being silenced by a code that we didn't write. So let's talk a little bit about the battle over artificial intelligence. Modern John LaRose. John LaRose fought to ensure Black authors had a physical place to be published so their history wouldn't be erased. In 2026 right now, we are facing, like I said earlier, generative AI that is trained on Black literature and art without consent or compensation. Large tech companies are using the new beacon of our culture to train machines that will eventually replace us. John LaRose taught us that the word is power. In 2026, we have to protect our cultural DNA. We cannot let an AI automated system or structure our soul and sell it back to us as a subscription. Now, this is just some of my final words that I want to say before we go ahead and end the live, y'all. John LaRose and Lennox Pierre were the guardians. They knew that the drum, which is the music, the sound, soul, and also the book, the literature, the history, were the twin pillars of our freedom. Lennox decided to fight to protect the sound, and John protected the story of our soul. In 2026, we are seeing a new kind of colonization. It is not a physical flag anymore. It's a terms of service agreement. It's an AI model mimicking our ancestors' voices. It's the separation of our culture from our bank accounts. John and Lennox remind us that unity is our greatest intellectual property. We have to be the ones who own the bookstores, the servers, and the legal teams. We have to be as organized as they were in the New Beacon days. Don't just consume the culture, protect the creators that make the culture. That is the only way that the lights stay on. So, let me ask y'all a few questions. Do you feel like your favorite Black creators are getting the credit they deserve on the apps that you use? If we don't protect our history in 2026, do you think AI will tell a truthful story about us in 2050? What does the future have to hold when it comes to some of the most pertinent stories and experiences that we have had as a people? Do we continue to fight to be the authors and the voices of those said stories? Or do we just allow technology and AI systems and maybe even other individuals to tell those stories for us? Or do we capture the stories, the truth, and bring it set forth for people to hear directly from our lips? As we bring this journey to a close, I want us to take a deep breath and feel the connection that spans across every ocean and every border. We have traveled from the clinics of London to the cattle ranges of Canada, from the liberation of the Congo and the hidden fortresses of Brazil. What we have seen today isn't just a list of names, it is a map of our shared soul. I lead with love and light because I believe that when we truly understand our history, we stop feeling like guests in this world and we start feel like owners of our future. But let us be clear. Love is not passive. Love is a protective force. In 2026, the struggles of these 6 men are now knocking on our front doors yet once again. We see it in the algorithms that try to separate our health from our humanity. We see it in the school boards trying to separate our children from their heritage. We see it in the digital mines of the Congo, where our brothers are still fighting for sovereignty that Lumumba died for. History is trying to repeat itself through code, though policy and through silence. But we are the generation that says, not on our watch. I am calling for a global unity that transcends where you were born or where you are located. Our culture is the thread that binds us, and our collective intelligence is the shield that will protect us. So here's the call to action. Educate and elevate. Do not let a single day go by where you don't pour this history into your heart of a young person. If they don't see themselves in the past, they won't lead us in the future. Support the independent. Protect our digital Colombos. Support Black-owned tech, Black-owned media, Black-owned banks. We must own the platforms where our stories are told and our business is done. Be a conscious consumer. Demand to know if technology, the one that we hold in our hands every day, is it honoring the lives of our people? Or is it just to consume us and use us? And my final blessing to everyone, we will continue to move forward in love, because love is the only thing that can cast out darkness of division. We move forward in understanding, because when we know our brother's struggle or our sister's struggle, we can therefore make it our own. You are the live legacy. You are the dream that John Ware and Dr. Moody and Patrice Lumumba had when they looked into the future. Walk with your head high and lead with a heart of light. And never forget, we are one people, one history, and one unstoppable force. So thank you all for joining me on this live. I really appreciate it. I want us all to stay safe, stay connected, and keep the fire burning. That's all I got for this one, y'all. I will talk to y'all on the next live. I'm going to go ahead, per usual, and end us out with a bop. And I will talk to y'all soon. Golden out. Bye.
The air is thick with whispers, digital ghosts in the machine. They feed us fiction till our vision's blurred, you know the scene. Static on the screen, a 24-hour scream, selling us a fractured dream, tearing at the seams. They got us locked in little boxes, picking sides, while the real tide rises and nobody hides. Yo, podiums are burning, bridges turn to ash and dust. They trading rhetoric like bullets, banking on our lack of trust. Got us debating pronouns while the planet starts to rust. Got us obsessed with power, drowning in our own disgust. Politicians playing chess with pawns that look like you and me, selling off the future for a bump in their damn GDP. And what we talking about, the foolishness, the vanity, fighting over AI songs, the height of our insanity. A fake voice on a fake beat gets more rage and more ink than a real bomb dropping on a city while we blink. They engineered the outrage, designed it to divide, so we never look up from our phones to see the coming tide. Oh, can you hear the war drums pounding out a rhythm low? They're marching us to battle for a God we do not know. They want us choosing colors, but our blood all runs the same. Just strangers in a mirror whispering a different name. I'm praying for the day the sun won't care what shade we are. That we can see the human heart behind the battle scar. Tear down the flags and see the faces before we run out of safe places. I see the babies born into this atmospheric hate. Taught to fear their neighbor before they learn to conjugate. Lines drawn in the sand by hands that never touch the soil, while the working class backbone is bent in endless toil. From Ferguson to Palestine, from Kiev to the Sudan. Listen, it's the same damn story, part of the same damn plan. Keep the people fighting over scraps upon the floor, so they never band together and demand a slice of more. They call it patriotism, tradition, call it pride. I call it ancient venom with a modern place to hide. Skin tone is the uniform they gave us for they war, but the soul inside the flesh is what we should be fighting for. And I'm tired, so tired of singing this eulogy. Oh, can you hear the war drums pounding out a rhythm low? They're marching us to battle for a God we do not know. They want us choosing colors, but our blood all runs other in the eye, past the melanin, past the zip codes and the bank accounts they fence us in. What if our only currency was empathy and grace? What if we found our real reflection in a stranger's face? This ain't a lyric, it's a lifeline that I'm throwing out. This ain't a song, it's the beginning of a different route. I'm a daughter of a struggle, a mother of a dream, to wash away the blood and poison from this bitter stream. So turn the volume down on all the noise they try to sell, and listen to that quiet voice inside you know so well. World War III is knocking, they're at the door, but it's not nation against nation anymore. It's ignorance against wisdom, it's love against the fear. The real war is right here. Sickness spreads in whispers, in poison wells and corrupted code. But a community with a strong immune system develops its own antidote. This is the cure. Listen, yeah, there's a venom in the discourse, a toxin in the talk, a parasitic agent feasting on the soul of the block. It spreads through the timeline, infecting the youth, disguising its poison in a fragment of truth that preaches self-interest, promotes the individual dream. Anything to fracture the collective, to poison the stream. We see the symptoms in the envy, the distrust that you breed. You planting seeds of chaos, fulfilling the system's need. This ain't about a person, this is about a constitution. You're a weapon of division, a tool of social pollution. Like, the agenda's getting bold. Why? You people having soul jiggers up. You the poison, the cancer, and the cold. You don't fight for the cause, you just lighten the load for the get a conscious, see the fraud. You hold that max of fraud. Yeah. It was symptom of the sickness, a tool of the trade. For every conscious step we take, you pull us from the shade, back into the darkness, fighting sister against brother. While you collect the profits, then go poison another. You weaponize our trauma, you monetize our pain. Tell us to tear each other down for your temporary gain. You speak the language of the people with the motives of the state. Asleep a cell of selfishness designed to make us hate. But the body's getting stronger, the fever's starting to break. We can finally see the difference between what's real and what's fake. Like, the agenda's getting bold. Why? Your people have been so jiggers up. You the poison, the cancer, and the cold. You don't fight for the cause, you just lighten the load for the oppressor. Yeah, the conscious, see the fraud. Why? You hold them acts of fraud. Yeah. What the antidote is unity, the cure is in the roots. It's the knowledge of the elders and the fire in the boots of a generation rising that refuses to be bought. Recalling all the lessons that our ancestors taught. We cleanse the foundation, rebuild the immune to make the collective a garden where the real seeds can bloom. You can't poison the forest that shares a single source. We are the uprising, the unstoppable force. This is a conscious rebellion, a surgical strike to separate the healthy cells from the ones you're alike. This is more than a track, it's a call to the core, to protect the foundation of what we're fighting for. So let them have the clout, let them have the fake fame, while we reclaim the power that's attached to our name. Every word is a brick, every verse is a wall, to protect the community and watch the poisoners fall. So let the record show a community divided is a target, a community infected is a tragedy, but a community united is a revolution. And the golden rule: protect the people.
Yeah. A sickness spreads in whispers, in poison wells and corrupted code. But a community with a strong immune system develops its own antidote.
This is the cure. Listen, there's a venom in the discourse, a toxin in the talk, a parasitic agent feasting on the soul of the block. It spreads through the timeline and infecting the youth, disguising its poison in the fragmented truth. It preaches self-interest, promote the individual dream. Anything to fracture the collective, to poison the stream. See the symptoms in the envy, the distrust that you breed. You planting seeds of chaos, fulfilling the system's need. This ain't about a person, this is about a constitution. You a weapon of division, a tool of social pollution. Like the agenda's getting bold. Your people having soul, jig is up. You're the poison, the cancer in the cold. You don't fight for the cause, you just light in the load. For the oppressors, yeah, the conscience see the fraud. Bye. Your whole damn act of fraud. You're a symptom of the sickness, a tool of the trade. For every conscious step we take, you pull us from this shade. You fit into the darkness, fighting sister against brother while you collect the profits. Then go poison another, you weaponize our trauma, you monetize our pain. Tell us to tear each other down for your temporary gain. You speak the language of the people with the motives of the state. A sleeper cell of selfishness designed to make us hate. But the body's getting stronger, the fever's starting to break. We can finally see the difference between what's real and what's fake. Like the agenda's getting bold. Your people having soul, jiggers up. You're the poison, the cancer in the cold. You don't fight for the cause, you just light in the low. For the oppressors, yeah, the conscience see the fraud. Bye. Your whole damn act of fraud. But the antidote is unity, the cure is in the roots. It's the knowledge of the elders and the fire in the booth. So the generation rising that refuses to be bought, recalling all the lessons that our ancestors taught. We cleanse the foundation, rebuild the immune to make the collective a garden where the real seeds can bloom. You can't poison a forest that shares a single source. We are the uprising, the unstoppable force. This is a conscious rebellion, a surgical strike to separate the healthy cells from the ones you're alike. This is more than a track, it's a call to the core, to protect the foundation of what we're fighting for. So let them have the clout, let them have the fake fame, while we reclaim the power that's attached to our name. Every word is a brick, every verse is a wall, to protect the community and watch the poisonous fall.
So let the record show a community divided is a target. A community infected is a tragedy. But a community united is a revolution. And the golden rule: protect the people.
Sickness spreads in whispers, in poison wells and corrupted code.
But a community with a strong immune system develops its own antidote.
This is the cure. Listen. Listen, there's a venom in the discourse, a toxin in the talk, a parasitic agent feasting on the soul of the block. It spreads through the timeline, infecting the youth, disguising its poison. In the fragment of truth, it preaches self-interest, promotes the individual dream. Anything to fracture the collective, to poison the stream. We see the symptoms in the envy, the distrust that you breed. You planting seeds of chaos, fulfilling the system's need.
This ain't about a person, this is about a constitution. You're a weapon of division, a tool of social pollution. Like
the agenda's getting bold. Why? Your people have been sold, jiggers up. You're the poison, the cancer, and the cold. You don't fight for the cause, you just lighten the load for the oppressed. Yeah, the conscience see the fraud. Bye. Your whole damn act's a fraud.
You're a symptom of the sickness, a tool of the trade. For every conscience that we take, you pull us from the shade back into the darkness. Fighting sister against brother while you collect the profits, then go poison another. You weaponize our trauma, you monetize our pain. Tell us to tear each other down for your temporary gain. You speak the language of the people with the motives of the state. A sleeper cell of selfishness designed to make us hate. But the body's getting stronger, the fever's starting to break. We can finally see the difference between what's real and what's fake. Like, my, the agenda's getting bold. Why? Your people have been sold. Jig is up, you're the poison, the cancer, and the cold. You don't fight for the cause, you just lighten the load for the my. Yeah, the conscience see the fraud. Bye. Your whole damn act's a fraud. But the antidote is unity, the cure is in the roots. It's the knowledge of the elders and the fire in the boots of a generation rising that refuses to be bought. Recalling all the lessons that our ancestors taught. We cleanse the foundation, rebuild the immune to make the collective a garden where the real seeds can bloom. You can't poison the forest that shares a single source. We are the uprising, the unstoppable force. This is a conscious rebellion, a surgical strike to separate the healthy cells from the ones you're alike. This is more than a track, it's a call to the core, to protect the foundation of what we're fighting for. So let them have the clout, let them have the fake fame while we reclaim the power that's attached to our name. Every word is a brick, every verse is a wall, to protect the community and watch the poisoners fall. So let the record show a community divided is a target, a community infected is a tragedy, but a community united is a revolution. And the golden rule: protect the people. My. Protect the people. Protect the people. My. Protect the people. The people presence. My. You tuned into the right place. Welcome to the rain. Golden Queen, H2.0. Let's get it. You're looking for a diamond, found a treasure in the rough. Tired of all the noise, cause you finally had enough. I'm here to build a movement on a mission for the nation. Dropping gems of knowledge, killing all the hesitation. We fighting for the truth, yeah, we fighting for what's right. Building unity and shining up a brand new light. It's a variety channel, but the vision's crystal clear. Pushing us all forward, conquering the doubt and fear. Yo, welcome to the Queendom, H2.0 on your screen, with the content's real and smart and funny in between. This is more than just a stream, it's a platform for the change. Time to elevate the game and rearrange. So if you're ready for a vibe that you can feel and trust, joining in the movement is a definite must. This ain't just another channel talking smack behind the screen. It's a spotlight for the creators, building up of the scene, spreading radical love, that's the message in the code. Helping everybody carry up a heavy load, from social justice issues to the laughter that we need. Planting seeds of progress, watch them grow from just a seed. This is authentic, this is raw, this is everything you saw. Welcome to the battle that is truly being fought. Oh, so come with your respect and see the real effect, cause I protect my own right here on the throne. Don't make me unleash the dragon. You've been warned. Yeah. Don't make me unleash the dragon. You've been warned. Yeah. Don't make me unleash the dragon, you've been warned. Yeah. Golden Queen H2.0. The movement starts now. Go ahead. Hit subscribe, ring that notification bell. You don't want to miss a thing. Welcome to the family.